thought I'd get a little on par with Kai's new outfit. I guess it's the inverse colors, but it's all good. Still feel good. I look good. So the new Limit Break set is now out. With that introduces 4 new clans. I want to try to make a free-to-play video for each of these clans. Originally, I was going to do a profile of the Narukami deck with only rares and below to really make it as like budget friendly as I could. But I saw very quickly that it needs the double rare support, so that's where it's going to kind of be in that free-to-play range. So the goal of the deck. First off, Narukami is basically just a more aggressive Kagero. That is its strength and its weakness at the same time, because Kagero being able to control the board makes it innately a defensive deck, because then you can control the board a little more, draw into your pieces. With this deck being a little more aggressive, that means we're going to have to push on turns that maybe we don't really want to, but need to be able to capitalize on the board. With that in mind, what we're trying to do here is we're going to try to control the board just to get into a point where we are then going to be able to use one of our gunners and then finish them either with Gyra's Mega Blast or just use one of our big boys like Thunder Break and just kind of finish the game from there. So speaking of Gyra, he is going to be our main ride target and also be the Mega Blast for the deck. I decided to go with Gyra as the main ride target. One, because his soul charging allows him to be a 12k attacker, which can obviously hit MLB. His Mega Blast reads a little weird. Basically what it's saying is you do the Mega Blast during your main phase. Gyra gets the ability that when your front row rear guards attack, they get plus 3k and a crit. That includes him and both of your front row rear guards. This is pretty crazy because that basically means once your opponent gets to 4, if you can get your Mega Blast off, which I've tried to build this deck to be able to do around that time, then you just swing and win. To be able to execute this, we are going to be using the grade 1 and grade 2 gunners. Both of them basically have the same ability where when they are placed, you turn off one of the front row interceptors. You are not retiring them, obviously, you're just turning off their ability to block your attack. This is what I mean by that the deck can kind of force you to be aggressive, because there's going to be turns where you're going to want to hold on to your gunners because you're going to want to have that final game push, but you're going to need something on the board to do something every turn. So sometimes you're going to have to lay gunners when you don't really want to. As a backup Vanguard, we are playing the 4 Thunder Break Dragons. He has the new Limit Break ability, which means you have to be at 4 damage for it to activate. His is basically that when he attacks, he just gets plus 5k. So he's basically just a beat stick. He also has the really nice ability that when he is placed on Vanguard only, you get a Counterblast 2, and then retire grade 2 or below. This plays into the aggressive playstyle the deck wants to do of retiring the front row, swinging for face. But if you know you have a gunner in your hand and you're going to be laying it, then you can just snipe the back row and turn off their boosters, so then next turn they're not going to be able to rush you as hard. And then hopefully you can then make it to a later turn where you can make a final turn push with another gunner. I'm playing the 4 grade 3 Daijin. He is a 14k attacker. He does lose 4k on your opponent's turn, so he's a 10k. And he can't attack rear guards. I'll talk about why I'm playing him over the other like powered attackers in the grade 3 slot. Just know that that second clause of him not being able to attack rear guards is important, but the way that the deck is put together, it doesn't actually impact it that much. And then finishing off the grade 3 slot, I'm playing 1 Voltage Claw Dragon. He has the ability that when he's placed on Vanguard or rear guard, Counterblast 2, and then pop something in the front row only, so you can't turn off boosters. Voltage Claw Dragon is just something I'm placing here. You can kind of play it whatever you want. It is very helpful if you are short on Dragonic Death Scythe. He is basically a Berserk Dragon clone of Counterblast 2 and then pop a grade 2 or below. I'm only playing at 3 Death Scythe because the Counterblast 2 is a little bit heavy in the grade 2 slot. It's still a very powerful ability to be able to have the choice of turning off a booster, getting rid of an interceptor. But once you use his ability, then it turns off your Gyra because you need a Counterblast 4. So unless you heal, it doesn't work. That's why having 4 Garuda is very important. His ability to be able to countercharge basically enables the deck to be aggressive. So with Garuda, you can now do one of your Counterblast 2 moves with Death Scythe, Thunder Break, Voltage Claw, pop something, attack with Garuda, countercharging, knowing now that you have enabled your Gyra to be able to use his Mega Blast later in the game. Then the last card I'm putting in the grade 2 slot is the grade 2 Daijin. He is a 12k attacker, loses 4k on your opponent's turn, so he's an 8k. And same thing, he cannot attack rear guards. I don't really like him. The second that the 9k plus 3 guys come out, he's going to instantly get cut. For now, it's just kind of nice because since we are turning off interceptors, retiring them, he is a little easier to get past. But then him being an 8k, it does just kind of suck early game if you have to ride him and he's your only grade 2 and your opponent has an interceptor, because then you can't attack. So it's not that good, but we just kind of need something in that slot, and I feel like he's just kind of better than all the other grade 2s in the deck. And like I said, we're also playing 4 of the grade 1 gunners. He's the same ability of just turning off an interceptor. And then I'm playing 4 copies of Stormy. Stormy gets plus 3k every time an opponent's rearguard is popped. That means she is very easily a 10k booster. Sadly, this does not synergize with Gyra, because on the turn you'd use a Gyra play, you're also not going to be popping any rearguards. But because of Gyra's plus 3k that he's giving to the rearguard that's attacking, it technically is 10k. She is more times than not a 10k booster, but there are going to be turns where you're going to want the 8k. That is why I'm still playing the 1 Red River Dragoon, just to have that 8k body. Feel free to play around with your ratios of Red River or Stormy. I think either will do. I just prefer Stormy just because the turns that she works feels better than the turns that she doesn't. Our starter for the deck is Seishin. He's basically just a better Gatling Claw. The ability of when this unit's boost hits a Vanguard, counterblast 1 and then can pop a grade 1 or 0. This can work very well against stuff like MLB, the Endo. Turning off just really good starters is really scary. So your opponent is going to have these weird turns where they're not going to attack. You're not going to attack because it's just this game of who's going to give the opponent the first counterblast. Seishin kind of gives you this a little bit of edge over your opponent. Also, he goes to Soul, which is very important with Gyruss because him having a body in the Soul is going to be very helpful. I'm also playing 9 draws. I can also see you wanting to play maybe some crits, or with this Gyruss play, maybe some stands to take advantage of those reusing crits. I'm just choosing to use draws because the deck doesn't have any draw power. So being able to draw into maybe your second Gyruss, your PG, your Garudas, your Gunners even, it's going to be very helpful. So I like draws right now. Some lines of play. Like I said, I really recommend you really hold on to your Gunners, because what you don't want to do is lay more than 1 on a turn, especially when your opponent only has 1 interceptor. Because if you lay 1 and you don't need it, it's wasted. And then you're going to have a turn where you're going to want 1 and you already use them. You know what I mean? Like, it just can get very redundant. Them being able to do this ability for free is super important. So you want to be able to capitalize on that, and laying it too early can feel like a wasted use. Garuda is going to be able to, like I said, make it so Gyra can go off, but it also enables us just more popping. So if you know that you've already used up quite a lot of counterblast, the Gyra is just still going to be able to make it so you can then pop more stuff on the next turn. So you still want to be smart when you're using Garuda, so you don't ever want to go into your next turn with only 1 CB open. So that's why Garuda is very important to have as a 4 of. If you watched my free-to-play video of Shadows, you're going to kind of know this kind of strategy of re-riding the Mega Blasters. What this does is, if you are on Gyruss, you've already done the soul charging for the turn, and your starter has already gone back to the soul. This means you are now at 4 in soul. So that means if you re-ride another Gyruss, you'll then go to 5. His ability will activate. You soul charge. You are now at 6. So if you are at your 4 counterblast for the turn, and you are ready to do that final game push, re-riding that Gyruss can enable that 1 turn earlier. Other budget options for the deck. Helena is basically an Airmo clone. The filtering that it does is kind of helpful of getting to your second Gyruss. The reason I'm not playing it is because the deck lacks so much draw power that you're typically going to be discarding cards that you want to keep, especially because, you know, we're holding onto our Gunners usually. So it feels kind of counterintuitive. I was kind of dumb when I first built the deck and was playing 2 Rising Phoenixes. I wasn't really thinking because I was just looking at the draw because the deck needed it. But with this version of the deck relying on Gyruss, the Soul Blast 2 just turns it off. So yeah, just don't play Rising Phoenix if you're using Gyruss. The second Gyruss gets cut, instantly put in the Rising Phoenix, you know, because you need that draw power. The self-damagers, both the grade 1 and the grade 2, are not very needed in this deck since the only limit break we have is Thunderbreak Dragon, and him having a plus 5k is not that needed. If you've already started adding in other limit breakers, then maybe you should consider adding in the grade 1 because the grade 2 is not very helpful because we already have such a nice toolkit in the grade 2 slot. Now, I'm playing Daijin over, the attack, counterblast 1, get plus 3k, or the Breakthrough Dragon, which is the plus 3k when he's boosted. Breakthrough Dragon is obviously kind of the better one. The main reason is Daijin is 14k by himself. There's no counterblast. There's no needing to boost him. 14 by himself. Hits over cross rides. It's very nice. Now, I do think Breakthrough Dragon can be added in instead of Voltage Claw once you have a little more flexibility in your grade 3 slot. But for now, I really need more stuff to be able to pop stuff to really take advantage of Gyrus. Play around with that if you'd like. Yeah, Rumble Dragon. Not very good. Which sucks because, like, I got this cool-ass SP. He looks really sick. I love the art. But, yeah, he's basically a Goku clone, and Goku's not good anymore. Like, when he first came out, he was very nice because he would be able to pop boosters, turn off your opponent's next turn plays, especially now that units are so fat now. But he's too luck reliant. You have to get a trigger for him to go off. And if you don't, he's just a 10k vanilla. So, yeah, for now, I wouldn't play him. If you really have some cool strategy with him, then give him a try. But for now, I just don't really see him. Now, upgrades for the deck, obviously, Vermilion. Vermilion is where it's at. Him being able to swing at everything, take out everything in the front row, deal some damage. It's what makes the deck have a chance at competitive play. And then, there's Dungaree, which is just a great use of Counterblast, of getting rid of your opponent's front row stuff. So when it comes to crafting, yeah, Vermilion is better right now, but it sounds like from what the Japanese players are saying, that Dungaree actually has the better cross-ride unit. So I don't really know which one to tell you to craft for. If anything, I would say craft the grade 2 gunners, just because they are very essential. Same with Garuda, the countercharger. Those guys are enabling the decks kind of no matter what. So I would maybe kind of craft those a little bit and maybe just kind of play around with the triple rares in the rental system, which is very nice. That's how I was able to kind of play around with this deck. Now, going up against the meta, this deck actually has a very decent play against MLB. Like I said, having Seishin basically gives you an advantage over them, being able to get rid of their Wingull Brave very easily. Being able to turn that off, and then also in the same vein, without any countercharging, being able to use Gyrus can enable us to do some crazy stuff with them. He's a 12k attacker, so he can at least hit MLB by himself. Him giving plus 3k to everything makes our 9ks also a 12k attacker. So we can have a very easy final push without needing any boosters. Now, like I said, our biggest weakness is the fact that the deck kind of forces us to be aggressive. So going up against a lot of the meta decks, as soon as they get to their 13k cross ride number, it's just going to be really hard for us to be able to push, because we're going to have to commit boosters. Us popping, their units isn't going to really do anything when they have like a fat stack of cards in their hand. That's why Gunner is kind of a little stronger than the retiring sometimes, because there's no reason to retire like an interceptor if they're just going to place a new one next turn. So using our Gunner at least makes it so we're not using up our counterblast and can use it more for a final turn push. So in those cases, switching the gameplay around of using Gunners early and then counterblast later is more effective. Weirdly enough, one of the hardest matchups is against an Narukami mirror match. Them being able to take out our Seishin with their Seishin can do some weird stuff, especially if it is a stronger build of Narukami, with Vermilion and stuff. This deck just has a little bit of trouble keeping up with it. So my final thoughts for the deck is Narukami is one of like the funnest decks I think I've played in a long time. I'm, a big Kagero fan, so when this deck first came out in English, like in the TCG, I bought the trial deck, the Thunderbreak one, and then I bought like some weird little booster thing off eBay, and it came with like a Gyrus toolkit. So my Narukami deck for the longest time was like 2 Thunderbreaks, like 1 Gyrus, and some weird janky like generic stuff in the deck. But it was overall really fun. The aesthetic of them is really cool. Even though it's so similar to Kagero, it's still in its own little realm in itself. It's very different. So it makes for some like really fun games, some really cool deck building strategies. Like I said, you can be creative with this deck. You can like play around with the grade 3 slot, the grade 1 slot. You can play around with some weird triggers, especially once you add in Vermilion, dude. Adding in those crits can be like crazy. Yeah, the creativity in Narukami is what reminds me why I love Vanguard. Like, I sat down with this deck for only like 2 days and I already thought of like 20 different ways this deck could have been built. It also seems like the little bit of playing I've done with the other clans that have come out with Limit Break, they all can kind of have these like little experimental thoughts and can be executed. Yeah, I'm really excited for this new stuff. I'm currently working on the Great Nature build. I would love to hear in the comments if you are more interested in a Gold Paladin free-to-play over a maybe Angel Feather free-to-play. Both I have about the same amount of pieces for, so it's not like one's going to take me longer. Just knowing which one you're maybe more interested in, I'll try to maybe craft more. But dude, this rental system is making my life so much easier. I can, you know, just have none of the double rares or triple rares for a deck, and I can at least still get the footage and kind of show you like, oh, like with my little bit of playtesting, like this is what I was seeing with this deck. Versus before being like, I don't know, I got like 1 triple rare, I don't know what this does. Yeah, but I gotta be quick because I don't know exactly how long the rental system's gonna be in a season. Yeah, I never know how to end these. That's all I got.